Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 12 want to present about reading the philosophy of education. Reading all the philosophies is difficult. For we are not all accustomed to paying attention to the text which philosophy demands, and then because philosophers usually try to persuade readers about some controversial issues, and then typical philosophical text ask us to engage and think about what is being said. And then when reading philosophy related to education, the problem is made more difficult by the fact that all of us, at least sometimes in our lives, are involved with the educational process. So educational philosophy, like moral philosophy, tries to tell us about areas of life for which we have some experience and can pretend by to be some expertise. Therefore, the possibility of prejudice or fixed ideas stemming from our own experience remains looms large. On the other hand, the fact of such an experience gives us basis from which to begin judging what is being said. Here, as in moral philosophy, reading philosophy should help us understand our own experience, and saying it should validate them. It is important to know that all philosophers, when they write, are concentrating on this or that issue, and the particular issue on which they are concentrating might or may not be of interest to the reader. However, apart from these peculiarities, all of the writings exemplify this type of approach. Certain conceptions of education offered by some philosophers are deeply flawed because of the narrowness of that focus. At most, it only offers a partial picture of the kind of thing that philosophers of education cites two recent facts about British education. West Dumbarton's Higher Literacy Initiative, Mackay, 2006, where it is claimed that in an education-deprived area of the country, a strategy has been devised that has drastically reduced illiteracy in schools and will, in the near future, eradicate it completely. And then recent publication, December 2008, of the year's Lego table for secondary schools in the UK, where it is shown that in terms of one measure of educational success achievement at the GCSE and A levels, to the top-ranking public schools are close to independent school achievement, but there are a gaping gap between student achievement in the school and the performance of children attending the bottom half of the table. The quotes around the above fact indicate that these two may be controversial. There may be some who will dispute whether the research report and or Lego tables are accurate. The following is an explanation to dispel any doubts about the relevance of both or one of them to our knowledge and understanding of British education. That they are relevant will be part of the burden that follows. However, at least initially, it seems reasonable assumption that both represent an interesting and important aspect of our education system. The first seems to suggest that a persistent feature of our education system, namely the problem that about 20% of our children do not learn to read in primary school, can successfully overcome. Such a thing must of course be of interest to us in general and must a kind be of interest to every parent with elementary school age children. The second suggests that although some of our children do well in high school, in terms of conventional education achievement, many of our children do very poorly. What I will do is use these facts to test certain explanation of the nature of education. In fact, I would use them to suggest that these accounts are definitely not adequate. Thus, the example acts as a counter-example for this account. This use of counter-examples is one of the most common but powerful techniques of analytic philosophy. So, given any theory, people look for examples, real or imaginary, that will prove the theory wrong. Usually, the theory is given first and the counter example follow. Here I have reversed the process in part for dramatic reason and in part because these very real examples seem to me so important. It is a good exercise when starting to read philosophy of education to ask yourself what education problems you hope to address in what you read. In recently paper, a major proponent of the views I wish to consider, Professor David Carr, 2003, p. 2053, argues as follows: do not withstand any and all pressure to regard teaching in institutional and professional context as a form of technical or managerial expertise directed at specific social ends, both teaching and broader moral goals. Service appears to be reduced to a socially defined practice. The difference between education and schooling: school are social institutions that occupy space and are appropriately organized and regulated. Education is not in and of itself.